You're listening to the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. This episode is titled Conversations with a Sorcerer, Your Addictions. Now, I'll explain why I mention so often that my brother-in-law is a shaman and a real one in just a moment after the introduction. But in this episode, I want to share a conversation that I had with Don Xavier. And I want to start actually sharing a lot of conversations that I've had with him, with you guys, things that I can share, and then putting it in a way that will make sense to you. I want to share a lot of conversations I've had with him over the years on particular topics. This topic in this episode, and it may be a 2 or 3 part episode, I don't know yet because I don't know how far I will get in this episode, but this episode is about addictions. And you might think, well, I don't have an alcohol addiction. I don't have a gambling addiction. That's not really what I'm talking about. Everyone on the planet has addictions of some sort. It could be to social media. It could be, are you ready? It could be an addiction to anger, an addiction to hate, an addiction to self-pity. Many kinds of addictions, both chemical and non-chemical, and many behavioral. But we have addictions. And in this episode, I want to talk about an extended conversation that Don Xavier and I had about addictions, and you'll see yourself, I promise, in this episode. So keep listening. Hi, I'm Jim Fortin, and you're about to start transforming your life from the inside out with this podcast. I'm widely considered the leader in subconscious transformation, and I've coached super achievers all around the world for over 25 years. Here, you're going to find no rah-rah motivation and no hype, because this podcast is a combination of brain science, transformational psychology, and ancient wisdom all rolled into one to take your life to levels you've never thought possible. If you're wanting a lot more in life, to feel better, to heal, to have peace of mind, to feel powerful and alive, and to bring more abundance and prosperity into your life, then this podcast is for you, because you're going to start learning how to master your mind and evolve your consciousness. And when you do that, anything you want then becomes possible for you. I'm glad you're here. Okay, so in this episode, we're going to talk about addictions. We're going to talk about your addictions. Everyone on the planet has addictions. A workaholic has an addiction. An alcoholic has an addiction. Someone in self-pity all the time has an addiction. Now, in this episode also, I'm not going to approach it from a scientific point of view. Yet what I want to share is that Don Xavier, my brother-in-law, always merges, well, I shouldn't say always, but most often, if not always, merges the ancient wisdom and shamanism with science today. And oftentimes he will go beyond science. Okay, so I want to share something here very quickly. Someone called me out on this on YouTube. Let me explain why I say quite often my brother-in-law is a shaman. Trust me, I know it can be redundant and it's a broken record over and over and over again. Trust me, I know. But the reason why is we're always having new people join the podcast. And many people are coming in at different places when they're coming in. Some people are familiar with my work, some people are not. So I have to lay the groundwork. So I want to say in this episode, that's why I mention it so often, even though you may be tired of it and I get tired of it as well. I do it for the benefit of people coming into the community that are new listeners. So I'm also going to refer to him as DX. I call him Don Xavier. He's not the Don Xavier on YouTube, as I've often said, but I'm going to call him, which is what we call him many times, DX for Don Xavier. Some things that I share in these episodes, because over the years, I've always recorded conversations when I've had them with him. And we started back in the 90s. I started with him back in 1996. Back then we started on cassette tape. And then we went to disc and the small disc. And then we went to CDs. And now everything's digital and on the phone. But even on my phone, I literally have thousands of audios of conversations. And many of these conversations are 2, 3, 4, 5 hours long. I'm not kidding. When he is talking to those of us that work with him, I'm not exaggerating. He can start chatting about more ethereal things, more spiritual things, more cosmic things at 1 o'clock in the morning and easily go till 5 o'clock in the morning. I've watched the sun come up with him many times. Anyway, that's out of the way. I just wanted to share that. Some things that I share with you, and I want to do a lot of episodes because I have so many. And honestly, a lot of these episodes are a lot of work because I have to curate the episode. But these episodes, what I do is I take notes on everything he talks about often. I'll go back and listen to the audio. And what I want to do is share my very accurate regurgitation of the notes. When I say very accurate, it would be a violation for me, called a violation of the codes of conduct, for me to take something and bend it to the way that I want it to be or sound. So what I'm going to share is exactly what he has said to me and those that work with him verbatim. Some things that I share might fly in the face of many people who live very structured lives around their domestication. Domestication means that's a word that he uses. We become domesticated to the civilization that we live in. People in Russia are domesticated to Russian socialization and Russian ways. People who live in South Africa are different. People who live in America are different. And then we're all also domesticated as humans. So some of what I share with you might not fit in with your purely analytical scientific perspective. But as I've said before, he pretty much always ties things into science, no matter what he's talking about. But I'm going to just share it pure in the way that he shared with me. Find what you want, find the wisdom for you, find the wisdom that works for you, and leave the rest. Also, when he's sharing, it could be a 2, 3, 4 hour conversation. He jumps around a lot and he will skip topics and then move back and come back. And kind of what he'll do, he might talk for 3 hours and then at the end, weave it all in together. So my challenge is I can't listen to a 4-hour audio every time I want to share wisdom on the podcast. So what I'll probably do, I don't know yet, is just start running episodes, meaning I'll just start sharing the wisdom as it comes out of me that's come from him, and we'll see where it goes, okay? So this talk that I'm sharing now was back in October of 2023. It's a 44-minute talk, and I did listen to the whole thing today, and I took notes, and I have 8 pages of notes. I'm not going to cover all 8 pages today in this episode. We'll see how far I get. Okay, let's talk about addictions. And you may see me, if you're watching video, you may see me reading because I literally transcribed, and I did it physically because I wanted even myself to immerse myself more into the teaching instead of having AI translate it for me. So I've translated the conversations verbatim when I have found salient points of things that he has said. So if you see me looking at the screen, it's because I'm reading something he said verbatim. And that being said, I may comment on it, I may back up, I may, whatever, we'll see. Okay. So he said the worst addictions are the ones we use to destroy ourselves. And then he pondered for a bit as he was saying this because he speaks Spanish. He grew up in Mexico. And he was asking my sister a particular word. She understands Spanish. And I remember many years ago that Don Juan, who was his mentor, said to us that we humans are the worst executioner of ourselves. And he said, he was trying to get this word in Spanish, what it meant. And I said, is it executioner? And he said, yes, that's exactly what it is. So what he was saying is we use our worst addictions as an executioner of ourselves. And he said, we humans are addicted, but most of us don't notice it. And as I'm going through this episode, I think you'll see places in your own life, and I'm going to break it down, for you to the fundamentals to a large degree. And I'm going to, again, just share the way that he shares, okay? So many times we think we're not addicted to things, and it's an illusion. We are addicted. And he said, most people are like gunpowder on the inside. He talks in a lot of metaphor. So you'll hear me doing that with what I'm sharing. Most people are like gunpowders on the inside. And what happens many times is that someone around us will be a big trigger for us. And the metaphor that he was using is that many times we have gunpowder on the inside of us. And then somebody around us walks around us and they trigger us metaphorically by lighting a match and throwing it on the gunpowder. And then kaboom, we blow up. And our anger, our judgment, our resentment, our hate, our whatever it might be, whatever human emotion that got triggered. But here's the thing, and I'll talk more about this. Often, we don't think we're addicted to these things, but they are simply addictions. And then oftentimes what we do is we point to other people and we think that they are the ones that lit the gunpowder. Well, they may be the one by being the trigger that threw the match into the gunpowder, but the gunpowder is already in us. And before, you might have heard me say that all of us are like an orange. And when you squeeze an orange, what is in an orange will come out of that orange. Also, some of my comments, things that I'm sharing may trail off. I might not finish the thought, which I'll probably loop back around on another episode that's preceding this one relative to this, and then tie it back in somewhere else. So if you find I haven't finished a thought and you're hinging on, okay, what does this mean and what do I do? Keep listening to the episodes. And he said the worst thing that we do is we empower and we light the gunpowder. And that might sound a little contradictory when I say we light the gunpowder, when I just said other people throw a match on it. Just follow along. That's what I meant. I'll have to back up here and there, okay? So he said, we say we do not want to do that anymore, meaning we don't want to light the gunpowder. And we say we don't want to do it. I don't want to be angry anymore. I don't want to be triggered anymore. I don't want to be all these kind of things. But then what happens is the fuse gets lit again by somebody else in our external environment. And then we go into what he called the turmoil of our addictions. And when I wrote that down, I highlighted it, the turmoil of addictions. What turmoil does your addictions cause you? Now, I'm not talking so much about, it can be chemical addictions as well. I mean, it can be alcohol, which he addressed that in the conversation. But I'm looking at anger, envy, fear, greed, and a big one for a lot of people, aside from anger, a big one for a lot of people, and it becomes an addiction for people, is shame. Many people go into shame, and you see people going into their anger over and over and over and over and over, and their shame over and over and over and over. And they don't want to be there, but they're lighting the fuse, or they're making the choice. I'll talk about that in a moment. They're allowing and they're making the choice to go into the turmoil of the addiction. And then they wonder why they can't get out of these feelings. They never identify it as an addiction. They identify it as their anger. And people don't think about, is anger an addiction? Yeah, for many people it is, which if not most people, it is. And I'll talk about that in a moment. Our greatest power is choice. And we have the choice as to how we're going to respond after someone else has thrown a match into the gunpowder. Now, I do want to point out, which is why I preface this whole episode about science. You know, science has demonstrated that our habits are 95% brain-based. I mean, they're just, boom, we go into them automatically. So I do want to point that out. But the same research that was done in the Max Planck Institute, this is my comment, not his, also demonstrates that even though 97% of what we do is a habit, research has demonstrated that about 3 seconds before our decision is acted upon, we have a choice point
in those 3 seconds, meaning we can actually choose to follow through with the behavior we're thinking about following through on, or we've noticed has started rearing its ugly head, or even positive head in some ways. But we have choice. We always have choice. And as I said before, he told me many years ago, most of us say life is a choice. And he has said to me, no, life is not a choice. Life is choice. In any given moment, you are making a choice about every single thing in your life. Now, my commentary, not his. You may be driven by your brain and brain-based habits and neural pathways in the brain, but you always have choice. If you didn't have choice, people that actually are doing, let's say, heroin, I'll give you an example in a moment, they'd never be able to stop because they'd never have a choice. But people have stopped heroin. They have stopped cocaine. They have stopped different things because even though they might have a neurological disposition because of neural pathways in the brain, we still have choice. So what he said here is the way to use the match in the right way is not to throw the match into the gunpowder. Meaning, from my interpretation, don't let the trigger actually own you. Do not let the trigger control you, the anger, whatever it might be, because remember, we have choice and we have to start actually being conscious enough to make the choice. Is this a constructive or destructive addiction that I'm getting into? Now, he went somewhere else interesting in this conversation. And I've been there before, and I'm sure most of you listening have probably been there. He says that people wake up in the morning many times and they throw a match right into the gunpowder the second they wake up. And you might be thinking, what the hell? I just woke up. What do you mean I threw a match into the gunpowder? Let me give you some gunpowder that a lot of you guys throw a match into. I'm not there at this point in my life, but I've been there. And the gunpowder that he had mentioned that many of us throw a match into is they wake up and the first thing they start doing, worry, 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 money, worry, health, worry, environment, worry, relationship, worry. And they wake up and the first thing their eyes go boing and they're awake and boom, they light that match. They strike it and toss it in the gunpowder and their whole morning is just worry, 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 worry. We don't think about it this way, but worry is a habit. And for many people, worry is an addiction. Okay, I want to segue from the episode for just one moment. And I want to ask you, where were you most stuck in 2023? What things held you back the most? When I ask people, why they're not getting what they want in life, people often say, well, I was stuck with XYZ. Or, and this may resonate with you, I feel stuck. If you're feeling stuck, one question I want you to ask yourself is, what is it costing me? What is it costing me to not resolve this and to battle being stuck? And when you add that up, whether it's money and especially in business, but in your health and your relationships, when you add that up, it's extremely costly to be stuck in life. Now, all this being said, I created a new challenge. I created it last year. Many thousands of people have gone through it, and it's called the Get Unstuck Challenge. Interesting, the name's all about getting unstuck. Now, in this challenge, it's a 9-day challenge, and I walk you through at a very profound, at a very spiritual, level, and even at a cosmic level, I walk you through who and how you're being as a being, meaning your presence on the planet. And when you understand that, when you understand the nature of you at a very deep level, Now, you might have heard me say be to have before, and that's more about 3D reality. Who do you have to be so you can do so you can have? But I'm talking, what does it mean to be? And then what is that power associated with that? When you understand that, you automatically get unstuck in life. This program never offered it before to you guys. We're offering it now. I don't think we've offered it to the podcast and an ad. Maybe we have, maybe we have. I don't remember. Anyway, it doesn't matter because we haven't offered it a lot if we have. But we're offering the Get Unstuck Challenge again. It's only $97. Thousands of people have been through it and they rave about the results they're getting. And I know that you will do the same thing. So again, ponder the question, what does it cost me? What am I giving up? What peace of mind? What happiness? What money? What relationships am I giving up in life because I am stuck in my own crap? Now, as you're thinking about that, click the link, go to tcp.jimfortin.com/unstuck. Again, and we'll drop the link in the show notes, tcp.jimfortin.com/unstuck. Download the program, you get started right away, and your life will start changing dramatically. When you apply what you're learning in that program, your life will start changing in very dramatic ways, very, very quickly. And as a matter of fact, in the next 9 days. Okay, back to the episode. At this point in my life, it's not a habit of mine. But I want to point out, I was really thinking about this episode as though I was creating it for you guys. And I think back to my 20s. And I remember one day I was driving to work, waiting tables in my 20s after college. And I remember driving to work one day, worrying all the way there. And then I finished my shift and I got in the car and I worried all the way home. And as I was creating this episode for you guys, I'm like, shit, I used to do that. I used to get in the car and, wake up, open my eyes and strike that match and toss it in the gunpowder. And I'd be in that gunpowder all day long. Then I would find something to distract my attention. And once that was done, boom, light the match again, throw it right back into the gunpowder again. But he also said that people do things that are addictive. Like some people, they hate everything. No matter what it is, they hate it. No matter what it is, they've got a bad attitude. I slowed down there because I wanted to share something. I remember many years ago in my 20s when I was waiting tables, this girl that was a hostess in the restaurant that I worked in, I admire her for what she said to me. She said, "Oh God, I saw you get out of your car and I saw you coming in and you have the worst attitude." Now, I didn't see that in myself. My opinion at the time in my 20s was I'm a realist. I mean, I look at the world, I see what's going on. If you ask, I'm going to tell you what I see. But there's a difference between being a realist and being a positive realist. And it's all about interpretation anyway, I know at this point in my life. But I never saw myself as someone that was, as we call now, in the gunpowder. And I wasn't hating everything, but I had a negative attitude about so many things. A lot of people, they'll find themselves in jealousy of other people, no matter what anyone else does, they're jealous. Or for me, it was they were unhappy because of this, that, or XYZ in the world. And some people, which wasn't me, so to speak, they're completely unhappy all the time because of their kids. I see this all the time in people that I coach in the transformational coaching program, which, by the way, we do a whole week on habits in the program. We do actually 9 weeks of habits in the program. But I see people so unhappy in their 30s and 40s and 50s. Why? Because of mom and dad. Literally, they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and I've even seen 60s. And people are miserable because of mom and dad. Because guess what? Mom and dad are still controlling them. Now, what I want to share is everything that I talked about, even though it might be subconsciously reactive, but you know what? We can make the conscious choice to not stay in the reaction. In this conversation, he went somewhere else, and then I'll come back and pick up this topic. he had mentioned what he calls the new kids on the block, meaning the new generation. Kids that are in their, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. I'm going to just tell you, hate me, don't hate me, like me, whatever it is. I grew up working my ass off on a farm. And if I want to create something, I'm going to find a way to create it. I will make it happen, and I'll be responsible, and I'll make the right choices to make it happen. I see so many kids, and I know because I had to fire 3 people on my team that were on $75,000 a year salaries, and they all 3 got fired. Not all 3 for the same reason. Good people, wonderful people. Seriously, from the heart, wonderful people. That's why we hired them, because we liked them. They actually had good resumes, good people. But one of them, when they would hit a problem, they would just quit. They wouldn't figure it out. They would stop. Even though I've got an entire team of people, they never thought, oh, I should ask other people on the team, how do I solve this? Where are these numbers? Where are these metrics? Where do I find them? Can you help me? This person would just shut down. And all 3 of these individuals, and maybe it's social media, which at least I'm generally attributing it to, and the world they've grown up in, horrible, 3 times horrible communicators. They're good one-to-one when you're talking to them, but in terms of being on a team, they go like in their little cubicles and their little holes, and they're gone. And then you're like, where's this information? And they might be doing things, but they don't even communicate it to you. Or the team, and we work as a team. They don't know, at least these 3 didn't know how to work on a team. Again, I really like them. Good people. I don't know if they're listening or not listening. Doesn't matter. I'm telling the truth, at least from my interpretation. And my entire team's interpretation, because the entire team is pretty much over 40. And we're like, what the hell? Why won't these people do their jobs? Anyway, there's an article in Forbes magazine about that also, where a lot of companies were turning to the millennials, the kids, in their 20s, because they're a lot cheaper in the labor force, but they're not working out. Anyway, he said the new generation of kids, his exact words, and I found the experience to be true for me, is they're lazy. They won't do the work. They want the end result. Now, he's told me before, and I've said in the podcast, kids that are coming to the planet that are in their 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, etc., they come with an upgraded spiritual operating system, meaning they're coming at a higher energetic function than previous generations. And he said, even the kids that he works with, and he works with a lot of people in that age category, and he said this, and I've noticed this, I endorse this. A lot of these kids in this age category, they pick things up, boom, very, very quickly. They're figuring out things now. I know a kid that's 23 that's picking up things that I wasn't even picking up till my 40s. And this kid is 23 that I know. And when I'm talking to him, I'm like, I don't get it. He's 23 chronologically, and his thought process is like he's 53. He's mature and he gets it. And actually, I like this kid because unlike a lot of kids in his generation, he gets things done and he takes action and he's resourceful. But anyway, Don Xavier was saying a lot of the kids that he works with, because things come to them so easily, they get cocky and they won't do the work. And they gain things so fast that, and his example was they start seeing things and they have visions and they have downloads and they have awarenesses and they're clairaudient, clairsentient, and clairvoyant. And they get things so easily that they become lazy to doing their own work because they're so gifted. But let me back up to make sure I complete that thought. They're so gifted, they get things easily, and then they're being lazy because things are so easy. Then what happens is, as he said, when they get stuck, that's when they're supposed to do the work themselves because they already have it in them in the operating system, but they won't do the work because they're used to things coming to them so easily. And the whole point of this is even for these kids, as he calls them, he calls them the new kids on the block. The kids is many of them are lazy and they are cocky. And then that ties back into they've created an addiction out of becoming lazy and cocky. I underlined this when I wrote it down. He said, we have to know ourselves so we can see our addictions. When we know ourselves, we remember. When we remember, we have access to all of our past knowledge from all past lifetimes. We are all holy and have access to divine knowledge. And then he said, which is something I talked about at the beginning of the podcast, we allow society to domesticate, meaning we actually fall into the molds of being human. And that's toxic, folks. It really is. It's toxic. And that we live in a world of extreme mediocrity. We live in a world of extreme stupidity. We live in a world of extreme ego. And we live in a world that's not a very high-functioning, we're not a very high-functioning species. I'm just being candid. And people think, oh, we're the highest functioning species in the universe. And I'm like, are you fucking stupid? And I don't say that, and I'm not really thinking in that kind of way, but I'm like, my head explodes. Look at the shit we do on this planet, and we're the highest functioning species in this universe alone, in this galaxy of 500 billion galaxies in this universe, and this is a multiverse. Give me a break. But on this planet, I'm off my soapbox now, but on this planet, we develop addictions around the structures that are created by society. So I'll say that again. We develop addictions around the structures created by society, and that's what he means by becoming domesticated. And then he said, every 7 months, the body regenerates. We become brand new. Everything in the physical body regenerates. But science will tell you things like the liver will not heal. That is not true. I know examples of people that have done that. Years ago, 30 years ago, scientists would tell you after people had a stroke, oh, however you are in 90 days after the stroke is how you're going to be for the rest of your life. They didn't know about neuroplasticity. You can heal anything in any part of the physical body. So he was saying, every 7 months, we become brand new. Everything in the physical body regenerates. The body is rebuilt every 7 months. But then what we do is we go back into the habits and the addictions that tear down the regeneration. And an example of that would be me actually, sharing my interpretation is our bodies. Let's say that you go into an addiction of alcohol or a chemical. So the body regenerates, but because we're in the addiction tears down the regeneration, which is why we actually don't reap the benefits of the full regeneration. Because he told me one time, it was after I had the stroke, he's like, every single bit of your body will renew over the next 7 years. Anything and everything that's happened to you, you can rebuild. I have found that to be true. But we look at people that the body regenerates because that's what it does. But let's say they're doing heroin every day. So the body's going to regenerate, but they're actually being counterproductive with that, or counteractive, because you're doing the heroin then, which tears down the regeneration. Then he says, people who are addicted, many times it's a destructive addiction. And he said here, the person is in the process of changing, and then that person continues the addiction that destroys the renewing process. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to continue, and I've got a lot more to go. This is probably going to be about 3 episodes, I'm thinking, because I was only on page 2 and I've got 8. But he said, transformational takeaway, and this may carry through to every episode. Know yourself from the higher aspect of you. Know yourself as soul. Know yourself as divinity. know yourself as divine. And we'll pick up more on this. He said, choose addictions that will help you. And we'll talk more about that on the next episode. Choose, because we're all addicted, choose addictions that will help you and only addictions that will serve you. I will explain that on the next episode. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to picking this up. And I want to share a lot more with you guys. Trust me when I say I literally probably have 100 gigabytes of audio. So I'm looking forward to sharing this with you guys. Okay, thanks so much and make it a great day today. Bye-bye.